Okay. So hello and welcome to today's digital department update. Today, Dr. Thomas Montoya, double E, Physics 87, is here with us today. He's the interim department head and professor from electrical engineering. So please welcome him to provide us a campus update. And then just a couple housekeeping things to get before we get started. This event will be recorded and we'll also put it up on our YouTube channel afterwards. So if you know anyone that's interested that couldn't come, we'll have it up there for them to see. And as always, using the chat function, if you can say hi, it's always nice to see who's here. Make sure you put it to all panelists and attendees and just say your class and major so we kind of get an idea. We'll watch for those. So without further ado, please welcome Interim Department Head, Dr. Tom Montoya.
Morning, everybody. Well, I am here in the Ieee conference room to give you a little bit of an update on how things are going in electrical engineering these days. So give me a second here and I will figure out how to do my share screen. There we go. And make it bigger. Okay, so welcome to the digital department update for, there we go, the electrical engineering department. Here's a little outline what I'm going to try to cover today. So give a little bit of history, talk a little bit about some of our renovations that we've done lately, talk about our current faculty and staff, give a few numbers about our department, talk a little bit about our undergraduate curriculum, talk a little bit about some of the student activities, show some of our outreach activities, talk about some recent things with alumni. And then at the end, if you have any questions or want to have a little discussion, we'll take a little time for that. Okay, well, let's see. There we go. So one of the reasons I wanted to mention a little history is the Department of Electrical Engineering just had a centenary. So we're 100 years old. That as a little trip down memory lane, the Board of Regents in South Dakota allowed for an electrical engineering degree in 1913, but it took a few years to make that happen. And Edwin E. Clark, with the best initials ever for an electrical engineer, was the first recipient of a bachelor's degree in 1920. And in 1921, we were formally inaugurated that we were, for the first years, we were part of the physics department. We became our own department in 1921. So it's now 2021. So we are 100 years old. Okay, a little bit of other notes here. I can't possibly cover 100 years of history in this brief time, but I thought I'd hit a couple highlights. That in the late 60s, the Board of Regents approved a PhD degree for electrical engineering, and that lasted for a couple decades and it was phased out in 1983. We had Dr. Lou Riemenschneider from 1984 to 1994 as our department head, and one of the important things that he inaugurated was the development and use of computers, particularly PCs. That I was here at the time, and I remember doing my first term paper using a personal computer using the Palantir program. That was quite the change from having to type everything. And all that kind of came to a head in 1994 when we became the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Oh, there we go. Because I want to hold up. We have a magazine that we just did for our 100-year celebration, and we have lots of extra copies. So if anybody would like one of those copies, please shoot us an email or me an email, and we'll get one mailed off to you. Okay, back to my presentation here. Okay, so let's move on. We had a 15-year period where under the presidency of Dr. Gowan, he preferred rotating department chairs. So we had several of our faculty members, Drs. Batchelder, Simonson, Hassan, and Hemmelin, took turns leading the department during those years. Then in 2011, we went back to having department heads, and you can see the various names and culminating with me currently. So a few highlights that are of particular note for these last decade or so, that under the leadership of Scott Roush, we had a successful 6-year Abet reaccreditation for both the electrical engineering and computer engineering programs. And sadly for me, as you might guess, 6 years ago was when that happened. And this year we are in the midst of getting ready for our next round of Abet accreditation. And I guess the good news is it'll only be for electrical engineering now. Another big note, about 5-6 years ago, we renovated our general teaching labs in the departments. That was a big undertaking. I have some photos to show you what went on with that. In 2019, a big thing that happened is we returned to being the electrical engineering department. And that year, that from the electrical and computer engineering and from math and computer science, they pulled out the computer science and the computer engineering and formed a computer science and engineering department. And they're housed over in the McLaury building. Interesting note from our curriculum that in 2019, we had minors in electrical engineering, electronics engineering and technology, and systems engineering. And just this fall, we have added an avionics minor due to, I guess, both student as well as our recruiters' interests, or the recruiting company's interests. And happily for us, we got our PhD program reinstituted in 2020. So lots has been going on these last couple of years as far as curriculum is concerned. Okay, so here's a few pictures of what happened with our teaching labs. So over here, you see the before picture with our blacktop benches and those, I'll say mint green power connection cabinets or panels. The main reason for the renovation was, quite frankly, the EEP building was built early 70s. And after about, well, say 45 years of hard use, all the hardware on those lab benches was starting to fall apart. The hinges were coming off, the handles were starting to come off. So it was just time to get them renovated. So here we are in mid-process, and you can see, obviously for an electrical engineering lab, there was lots and lots of power wires going to each lab bench that had to be dealt with. So this was a all summer project to get the benches that feature some risers, which is troop over to the side of the room to grab lab equipment. And now it's all there for them. And if you're wondering if our students got a little bit older, no, this was a picture we took during the 2021 reunion. So we had a little presentation I did in the teaching lab for them. So we're pretty happy with how that turned out. A few other little things that we had to do while we were changing over to back to electrical engineering, as we put up new signage all around the departments with our new name and our, I guess you might say, going back to our original vintage name. And here's a picture of our current students. We always like to have their photos up on a display panel there so people can learn each other's names and connect with one another. Okay, something interesting that's been coming together these last few years is in the hallway between or adjacent to our teaching labs, we have, I don't know, it's hallway / lab room, but in there right now we have a flight simulator that Scott Roush was instrumental in procuring for the department, and it's going to be a key element with this new avionics minor and the associated avionics 1 and avionics 2 senior elective classes. So here on the left, he's demonstrating it to a few of our alumni who came to visit us in July at the 2021 reunion. On the right, you see a student using the flight simulator. So besides demonstrations, it's now going to be used for lab periods for Avionics 1 and Avionics 2. And I'm happy to note or want to mention that some local donor who wants to remain anonymous just gave us a $10,000 gift to help us get Avionics 1, Avionics 2, and the Avionics minor off the ground. And we hope to announce we're getting a 6-digit donation from a big recruiter at School of Mines campus, but until it's official, I don't want to give away the name, but the generosity of our alumni and our recruiting companies is very much appreciated. It's going to allow Scott and the department to get first-class equipment for this avionics classes and avionics minor. So a little example of people giving back that's been very, very appreciated by us. Let me take a few minutes and go through some of our faculty and staff. That up here, of course, is me. I'm, as you can see, alumni, got my Bachelor of Science degrees here. I went off and did some Army stuff for a while, and then joined Texas Instruments in Colorado Springs, where I was able to pick up my master's degree. And later on, when the defense industry started contracting, I took a buyout package from Texas Instruments and went back to school at Georgia Tech in the early 90s. And after a small detour to the University of Tennessee, I've been back here at School of Mines since 2001, thanks to the efforts of Dr. Larry Simonson, who was department chair at the time, who talked me into coming on back, and I've enjoyed every minute. My specialty area for research is electromagnetics, and over the last 20 years, I've taught many, many, many classes, but currently this year I'm going to be doing electric and magnetic fields, Ieee 381. I'm helping out with one of our freshman classes, and in the spring I'm going to be teaching a senior elective on antennas, which is one of my favorite classes, that we get to build stuff. That is always a little problem with electrical engineering, is you usually can't see electricity or voltage, and that's usually a good thing. If you can see the electricity arcing, that usually means bad things are happening in your circuit. So when we build antennas, that's a little bit of fun for the students because they have something they can show off to their friends and family. Over here to the right, Nayao Chahari is one of our instructors. She typically does one of our freshman classes as well as service classes for non-majors, and she handles Circuits 2 class some semesters. In the lower left corner, we have Haiping Hong. He is a research scientist, and he's very heavy in nanotechnology and the applications of that. So he's very, very active researcher. On the right, we have another one of our alumni who has been very generous with his time and is an instructor for us. He mostly handles senior design classes, does a fantastic job with it, and his years of experience with Hewlett-Packard really pay off in helping students learn the realities of doing design work as opposed to homework and exam type problems. He's also a proud alumni of South Coast School of Mines. His wife, Marilyn Maxwell, is a volunteer with the department. She is a key component in helping us with assessment and our Abet accreditation. That she takes a vast amount of time getting stuff organized and played a key role in our last accreditation. And I anticipate she's going to be playing a key role with our next round that's coming up this year. On the right, we have another alumni who's giving his time to teach here, Dan Mullally. He typically helps out with our Circuits 2 class as well as our Ieee 330 energy systems class for the juniors. Lower left corner, we have Leslie Krasneski. She's our administrative assistant for our department. So she's a glue that holds us together. She handles budget issues, does posts on social media. So if you're interested or curious on what's going on in the department, she's a great person to contact. on that, and just all in all keeps us organized and on track. Lower right corner, Dr. Raghi, who is one of our assistant professors. His research areas are virtual reality, does drones, autonomous vehicles, machine intelligence, artificial intelligence for research areas. He teaches a couple of our required junior classes, signals and systems and control systems, and does several senior electives as well as graduate classes. Moving along here, another one of our tenure track professors, Dr. Roy, also specializes in electromagnetics as well as communications. So that's keeps him busy. He teaches one of our junior classes, applied electromagnetics, as well as senior classes such as microwave engineering, which also has a graduate class component and several graduate classes. Scout Roush, you've already heard, he's another alumni of the South Coast School of Mines. He is very, very busy this year because he is getting our Avionics 1 and Avionics 2 classes off the ground, which support our new avionics minor. And it's off to a resounding start that he has over 20 students in the Avionics 1 class this fall. So he's very, very busy with teaching that class and getting the labs put together for that, as well as played a key role in getting those donations that I mentioned. So this is off to a great start. Looks like we're going to have a great amount of interest in that, and that's going to support recruiting companies such as Collins Aerospace, Raven Industries, Garmin, Ball Aerospace, just a few to name that all are interested in students and have a great interest in the field of avionics. So with that, let me move on to Dr. Simonson. You should recognize his name. He's been associated with the electrical engineering or electrical and computer engineering department since the late 1960s. So was a student here, he taught here and for many years, and now he's an emeritus professor who's an assistant to the president, but he's also been generous enough with his time to teach our Circuits 1 class these last couple of years in the associated labs, and does a bang up job with the students there. And he's also kind enough to help out the computer engineering students with our Signage 244 class. So he is a mainstay of the department. Dr. Thornburg, you'll notice a theme here, also a graduate of the South Coast School of Mines, and he did 2 degrees, electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, and then went off to graduate school at Stanford and picked up some PhD and master's degree there, and I believe aerospace engineering. He's been a mainstay in recent years teaching classes such as one of our freshman courses, does feedback control systems, digital control systems, and a variety of other classes. So he is, in recent years, was kind enough to pick up systems engineering and teaches a introductory class on that, and which is a core class for our systems engineering minor, which has attracted a lot of interest both from electrical engineering students as well as computer engineering, industrial engineering, and mechanical engineering. So that one has really caught a lot of interest because in industry, there's a lot of systems engineering work that goes to putting together electrical engineering systems, navigation systems, and avionics. All sorts of things are systems, so we need to know how to make things work together. One of our newest tenure track faculty is Dr. Long Zhao. He is our new, what we call power guy. So he's been teaching electronics 2, power systems class in the fall, and he's going to be doing a graduate power class this spring. He comes to Texas at Arlington, off to a great start. Related faculty and staff, we're busy doing searches. We need a new lab technician. We're going to try to find a new tenure track faculty member this year, and we're in the midst of a search for a permanent department head for electrical engineering. So we'll have a busy year here and have some new faces coming up next year. touch a little bit on research areas, applied electromagnetics, artificial intelligence, communications, control systems, embedded systems, robotic systems, power and energy systems, all are active research areas here. And depending on who we hire this year for our new tenure track person, we might either reinforce one of these research areas or activate a new research area, but we are staying busy in the research area. Let me move on to a few numbers about our department. Currently, we have about 145 undergraduate students and about 20 graduate students. This last year, we had 22 undergraduates graduate between fall and spring, and in a very large bump, we had 14 master's degrees that we granted this last year. So that's that's one of the largest numbers we've had in the last 10, 15 years for master's degrees. So we're very happy about that and hope to continue the trend. Always like to take a little time, that something that makes me a little jealous, that it was just starting to roll out in my time as an undergraduate here, but South Dakota Mines is very, very active with internships. So summer jobs with companies and co-ops, summer plus an academic semester. And you can see that nearly 80% of mine students do one of these, and most students can do a couple of them. And it's very common particularly in the electrical engineering department, that we'll have students do an internship between their sophomore and junior years, and as well as between their junior and senior years. And campus-wide, students that do an internship or co-op have 100% placement rate, which admittedly is not much different from our typical placement rate in electrical engineering. This last year, we had 96%, and I don't think that one person who didn't respond to our email is unemployed. I just think they didn't respond to their email. So good news, strong job market for our students, both permanent positions as well as internships or co-ops. Really, the only reason it's not 100% is some students, for personal reasons, don't want to do an internship or co-op. They work on the family farm, in the family business. They're doing sports, they're in ROTC. There's lots of reasons, personal reasons, why it just doesn't work for some students. For some of you alumni like me, that can make you a little jealous. The starting salaries range from the mid-60s into the high 80s for our students this last year, with the average being $72,828. So very, very strong job market. And you can see from our career fairs last year, about 2/3 of our employers that came to the career fairs at School of Mines were looking for electrical engineering students. And if you add up the 77 to 71 and look up here to the number of undergraduate and graduate students we have, and take into account most of these employers were looking for multiple candidates, it was a great time to be an electrical engineer. That plenty of options for our students, and hopefully everybody is off to a great start, and hopefully the employers are happy as well that we've had record numbers coming to the career fair, and hopefully we'll continue that trend. To give you an idea of some of the recruiters that are looking for electrical engineering students over the last 5 years, these are the top names, and it's a good thing that we are not pigeonholed to one particular company, that we have lots and lots of companies that are hiring 4, 5, 6 students on down to some that are only getting 2 or 3, but you can see it's a huge range of industries. We have aerospace represented, Collins Aerospace, Raytheon, Blue Origin, Boeing are a few examples. We have energy companies, Black Hills Energy, Power Engineers, a few others. If you look around, we have more traditional manufacturing companies like Honeywell, Kimberly-Clark, Raven, Emerson, for a few examples. We have consulting companies, Black and BH, Burns and McDowell. Throw out a few names here and can't hit everybody. And we have parts companies like Oh, where'd they go? Oh, shoot, I'm having trouble spotting them. But interstates, for example, and we've had people go to DigiKey. I don't think I caught them, or I'm not seeing them right now, but wide variety of companies there, and our students are going to all sorts of industries and all over the United States. A few, you might be interested to see what our most recent curriculum looks like. We had a pretty significant revision in 2019 in response to being returned to being an electrical engineering department as opposed to electrical and computer engineering. So we took that opportunity to do a pretty substantial revision. Also, the Board of Regents in South Dakota told all the engineering departments we had to cut back to 130 credits, and we were at 136 credits. So that means we had to trim a few classes and credits here and there. So freshman year stayed fairly similar to what you're probably used to, but we did add a couple freshman classes in these EE 110 and EE 120 classes. We try to do a little career development for our freshmen, they have talks by practicing electrical engineers. Once COVID starts winding down, we're going to have tours and plant visits for them to do to show them some of the possibilities of where they might take their electrical engineering degree. From a technical side, in EE 110, we hit a little bit of digital electronics, learn a little bit about binary numbers, how to add and subtract them, a little bit about logic gates, a little bit of Boolean algebra. In the lab, they build some of these digital circuits and show all that stuff works. In the spring, we have an EE 120 class, more career development. And in this class, from the technical side, we have a little bit more traditional core electrical engineering. So learn about voltage, learn about current, learn about Ohm's law, build some simple DC circuits in the lab to show that stuff works. In addition, we try to work in a little bit of MATLAB work. That's a very popular computer program for engineers, and we're trying to get people started as a freshman so that it's not such a shock to their system when in their sophomore and particularly junior classes, they make very heavy use of that program. One thing that's a little unusual for our department is we let our students take any of the introductory programming classes. So they have their choice of Computer Science 150, uses the C and C++ language. There's a new course that hasn't made it onto the list officially yet, Computer Science 115, also uses the C and C++ language. So I encourage my advisees who are interested in robotics or computer science or computer engineering topics to take that class, since it's the prerequisite for those further on classes. If they're not so interested in that, there's a Computer Science 170 class that uses the Python programming language, which is real popular in industry right now. So we give our students some options there. Moving on to the sophomore year, that stayed fairly similar from its previous edition. We still have our Circuits 1 and Circuits 2 classes. Some of you might have taken 201, 202, Introduction to Electrical Engineering. It's pretty much the same class, just a new label on it. In the spring, we now have an electronic sensors and actuators class. Many of our alumni might have taken mechatronics. Once again, somewhat similar topics that are covered in that class. And we always like to have that class in the sophomore year because this is the class that gets a whole bunch of our students their first internship or their first co-op experience, because that embedded systems experience with sensors, communicating with microprocessors and writing software or code on the microprocessors to analyze the data and send out command signals to actuators is really valuable in the industrial setting. Okay, moving on to the junior year. As you can see from the highlighted classes, it's still the challenging year for our students. This is the year that they learn to manage their time, or they learn to enjoy caffeinated beverages to keep their energy level up. Where we're covering all these core subdisciplines of electrical engineering that are so important to helping students figure out what they want to specialize in, as well as to satisfy our accrediting agency, Abet, Accreditation Board, Engineering and Technology, for those of you who have forgotten. You might have noticed English 279, English 289 have been renamed from Technical Communications 1 and 2 to work in the word STEM communications in both cases. It's pretty much the same material, but it's that important skills of learning to write technical reports, technical memos, and so forth that all of us practicing engineers know and love, that you don't get out of writing just because you have your degree. In fact, you get to do more paperwork as a practicing engineer. Okay, one of the more noteworthy classes in the junior year is Electronics 2. That in that class, our juniors actually are given a bag or box full of parts, and they get to build a shortwave radio transceiver from scratch. So all these parts that you see are loose component form when they get at the thing, and they have to populate the circuit board, build and test all the subsystems. They learn the joys of troubleshooting, that just because you have a new part, as we all know, doesn't mean or guarantee that it works or works correctly. So there's a lot of lab time involved with this class. And in the end, they have a working radio transceiver that can transmit in the shortwave frequencies all over the world. And some students find it a very painful experience to learn these hands-on skills of soldering, troubleshooting, and so forth. Other students, some of them come from the ranks of the radio technicians or radar technicians at Ellsworth Air Force Base or other backgrounds, and they find it a little bit less challenging than the students that it's new to, but in all cases, it's a great experience. And as I hear from our alumni over and over again, it's one of the most valuable classes that they ever took. Senior year, we ease up a little bit on the credit load. Some of the highlights in the senior year are we have 3 electrical engineering emphasis electives. We used to call those senior electives, but with so many students doing co-ops, it's not at all unusual for a student to have a couple 300 level EE classes and a couple 400 level EE classes. So the academic advisors help them out, and we make it work out for them. So that's the reason for the name change there. And we have a pretty wide variety of classes. We have that Avionics 1, Avionics 2 that I just mentioned, some classes in the control systems world, power world, systems engineering, power world, and in electromagnetics world with our antennas and microwave engineering classes. And I couldn't possibly list all the possibilities, but those are a few that we have in the rotation this year and last year. In addition, we have keystone or capstone class for our seniors is Senior Design Project 1 and 2. You might notice that we've increased the number of credits associated with the senior design classes, and we did that mostly just to reflect the reality that students spend many hours working at home or in the lab on their senior design projects, and we wanted to ensure that they got an appropriate level of credit for that. And like I mentioned, Mr. Lowell Kolb is doing a bang-up job with the students this year and for the last few years in that area. So very active, very hands-on, customer-driven projects. And they run the gamut from power-related projects to projects that verge on computer science, computer engineering. A lot of them have a heavy component of mechanical engineering because there's chassis and frames involved with vehicles of various sorts. So wide range of senior design projects to reflect the wide range of career possibilities that our students are getting into. And in recent years, quite a few projects in the avionics and aerospace areas, taking advantage of our flight simulator and interest or co-op projects that our students are involved with. Speaking of our students, in addition to the classroom, they're very, very busy on campus, and I can't possibly cover all the possibilities, but I'll kind of hit a few of the highlights. Our student chapter of IEEE is very active. We have during the week as well as weekend circuit design challenges where they take a pile of parts and on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon, they put together a working system. A lot of students just want to get some hands-on experience learning how to solder and just doing fun stuff rather than classroom stuff. IEEE Eta Kappa Nu Honor Society is active this fall. They're volunteering to have open lab hours in the evening so students can come in and work on personal projects as well as catch up on lab work in the classroom that they just didn't quite get a chance to finish. We have our ham radio club or amateur radio club that still has the ham shack going. Some students are involved with the EPICS program, which I would say is, I always say a community project. So it's kind of Kiwanis Club for engineers. So they do service projects. One noteworthy one, they help design and build a greenhouse for Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. So that had a heavy component of electrical engineering involved. There was a solar array, battery pack to store the power. The greenhouse was a big old embedded system. There was light sensors, humidity sensors, temperature sensors, all feeding data into a, I believe it was an Arduino, might have been Raspberry Pi microprocessor that controlled heating elements, the fan, artificial lights, and so forth. Everything it took to keep the plants healthy in that greenhouse. Lots of organizations on campus that our students are involved with. One noteworthy one is WISE, Women in Science and Engineering, that our Ieee students are part of the leadership for and always active with. Always have students involved with competition teams in camp. So there's a robotics team, unmanned aerial vehicle teams, various alternative fuel vehicle teams, clean snowmobile, electric motorcycle, electric car teams. So lots and lots of them. Pretty much every competition team needs electrical engineers because almost all these vehicles or robots of various sorts, they're embedded systems. They need sensors to talk to a microprocessor and for the microprocessor to send out command signals. So, and there's always power involved. A lot of these, they're autonomous. They have to have their own independent battery pack, and oftentimes you need to take that DC battery power and turn it into AC power to drive induction motors and motors of various sorts. We have plenty of students involved in sports, and particularly esports. Probably not going to take anybody by surprise that computer science, computer engineering, and electrical engineering kind of dominate our esports teams here at School of Mines. That's been a tradition for many years, so now it's a little bit more formalized. This last year, we're pretty proud that a team of electrical engineering students took second place at the IEEE Region 5 Student Circuit Design Competition that was held over a weekend. Very proud of them. They were competing with very, very large schools from Texas and all the way through the Midwest. And really the only reason they ended up with second place was they had a working circuit that was comparable to everybody, but they didn't have time to clean up the wiring and the paperwork. That's what relegated them to second place, but still it was a very, very strong performance. Here's a few pictures of some of the things our students have been working on. So the upper left corner, more traditional helicopter style unmanned aerial vehicle. Here's a quad rotor in the upper right. So that's a drone. Down here is in the left side corner is the electric snowmobile. Those are kind of eerie that you're used to a motorcycle having and a snowmobile having ear-splitting noise from the gasoline engines. This one is whisper quiet as it glides around on the snow. They go up to Upper Peninsula of Michigan to do their competition in the middle of the winter for obvious reasons. Down here in the lower right-hand corner is a few of our guys that are in the ham shack. and they took a break from transmitting to let us snap a photo of them. Here's the team of 4 students that participated in that IEEE Region 5 Student Circuit Design Competition. And you can see going from the left, Kelsey, Cherokee, Joseph, and Sky, that back in April of this last year, they had to do, due to COVID restrictions, their competition remotely. So they were set up in one of our teaching labs that weekend and did a bang up job, like I said, putting together a circuit from scratch. Had to design it, build it, and show that it worked. Okay, some things don't change. We have our traditions here at School of Mines. So those are my hands helping hold down a senior hat where a student was branding it. It was kind of fun. This year we had a variety. Some students knew absolutely nothing about branding. Now they can say they do know something about branding. And we had one student from a ranch family in Montana that a little less exciting for him, but I'll have to give him credit. He did the best brand of our seniors, but he had the advantage of experience. And on the right, we have some fun here, and this is kind of appropriate that since Halloween's coming up later in the month, that we always have a student costume competition. So we have all sorts of possibilities from Scream to Star Trek. That's a take on the Borg from the newer versions of Star Trek. So we're looking forward to that coming up here in a couple of weeks. Always a fun time for the faculty and the students. One of the things that electrical engineering is always proud of is our outreach activities. So one thing we do 5 times a year is go to mines events for prospective high school students. So on the left, I am demonstrating a Jacob's ladder that my daughter and I built. This was part of her junior high science fair project that hard to see in this picture, but she coated the electrodes of the Jacob's ladder with various chemicals and had arcs of all the colors of the rainbow. So she called it her electric rainbow. Everything from strontium that gave us red arcs up to zinc compounds that gave us kind of purplish electrical arcs. I typically, for demonstrations, use baking soda. Carbon gives us a nice orangey color, and the upper part of the electrode, I put some boric acid on. Boron gives us kind of a shamrock green arc. On the right-hand side, we have a Tesla coil that our IEEE Eta Kappa Nu students did as a service project. They built it for us, and we've been using it ever since. And Tesla coils are always fun that you can light up a fluorescent light bulb without it being connected to anything. And for safety reasons, we have the fluorescent light bulb at the end of a 3-foot PVC pipe. Even so, on days where we have particularly low humidity, you still get a little bit of a tingling at the end of that pipe, but it's enough that it's not going to disturb anybody. Around the school, Mines reaches out oftentimes to junior highs as well as high school students. So here's some of us representing at the 8th grade career fair. And here's this last spring, we had a WISE event for high school students, and all the engineering departments were there, including us in electrical engineering, to show off that there's lots of opportunities in science and engineering for our young people. Some recent things we've been doing with alumni. We had our big reunion this last summer here that kind of got postponed from 2020 to 2021 due to COVID. And one of the neat things that I discovered doing some research, put together the magazine I showed you, was we have over 3,200 graduates in the last 100 years from electrical engineering. And as you can see from this map provided by Kara, we have students that have gone on to become alumni and have careers all over the country, that everywhere from Hawaii and Alaska down to Florida. I was somewhat surprised to discover the only state in the union that we don't have an alumni, or at least anybody who will admit to it, is West Virginia. My theory is, if you're interested in working in the mining industry, the Western coal and mining companies in Nevada, Idaho, Utah, and Wyoming, and Montana, and so forth, snap up our graduates before the West Virginia companies have a chance. But we have everybody, or we have people everywhere from sunny Florida, Texas, and Hawaii, all the way up to Alaska. So people are everywhere, and it's kind of fun to see where our alumni end up with. There's all sorts of stories, and I really enjoy it. So if you get a chance to get to Rapid City, stop on by the department and give us a little bit of a story that we are interested to hear what you've been up to. Here's a few pictures from our 2021 reunion that Scott and Linda Roush were gracious enough to head up, and they thought they were going to get 100, maybe a couple hundred people, and it ended up having over 1,000 people. And we had a great representation and turnout from electrical engineering. That during our open house, we had, I'm guessing, around 50 alumni show up. It was a little bit of herding cats. We couldn't get them to sign in on the guest book, but it was a great turnout. We had fun in the labs. Here's Lowell Kolb showing some of our alumni, what we do in the circuits labs, for example. Over here, Scott Roush is demonstrating the flight simulator. I did a little history presentation since it was our centenary to alumni, and we had a great discussion and very interactive alumni there talking about what happened over the years that they were here. And here's Larry Simonson with some of our 50-year grads this last spring graduation that stopped into our department and had a nice time visiting with them. So with that, I'm going to wind down my presentation and say we've had a great first 100 years, and we're looking forward to the next 100 years. And thank you for your attention. Does anybody have any questions for me that I might be able to elucidate on?
Dr. Montoya, there was a couple questions that came in.
Oh, okay.
Well, Alan Kennedy says no alumni in UP of Michigan. I'll have to look and see on that one to see. We have alumni up there. I just don't know. I'll look into that one. I can pull those numbers. Okay. Bob Cates. So yes, I can get Dr. Montoya's presentation and send it to you, Bob and Robert, if you would like. Oh, my computer's doing something weird. That way you have it. So I can do that. So yes, Dr. Montoya, if you'd send me your PowerPoint presentation, I can pass that along.
Okay.
Bob Case wants to know, what do you see as the EE department's biggest challenge with the upcoming Abet recertification?
Oh, I think our biggest challenge is just the sheer amount of paperwork we have to put together. That this year, Abet, we're not going to have a on-site, or at least not yet, visit, so it's going to be done virtually. So we have an enormous undertaking that we have supporting documentation for every single one of our classes. So that means we have to do digital copies of examples of homework, quizzes, exams for every single class. That's a huge undertaking to put that all together. We have to do our assessment to show Abet how our students are accomplishing their goals and our department goals. So we have to demonstrate all that. So it's just putting together the sheer volume of material and putting it in electronic form this year that I think is the biggest challenge. And of course, I have to, or myself and Marilyn Maxwell, putting together our report to kind of tie it all together is going to be a big undertaking for me this spring. So that's our biggest challenges there. We have been reconstituting our advisory board that has quite a few alumni on it. So COVID kind of hampered that we weren't able to have on campus visits. So we did do a virtual visit in the spring, and I'm going to get one scheduled and organized this fall. So we're trying to get feedback from our constituent groups, and alumni and our advisory board are key components of that. So that'll be another challenge.
Okay. probably did not correctly recall, but it seemed, it's just, but it seems we had 18 credit hours semesters, 144 hours. Now we have 130 hours. What is the logic?
Well, it was kind of a decree coming from the Board of Regents that it kind of felt like choosing who was your least favorite child when we had to cut back on the credit hours. So you probably noticed we don't have physical education classes for the freshmen anymore, that we had to sacrifice that. We used to have a upper level humanities and social science class for our students. We lost that. And then a couple classes we trimmed a credit here and a credit there to get back to 130 credits. I think the Board of Regents' reasoning was they wanted to make it viable for students to finish in 4 years. And when in engineering, it's so tempting to add another junior class, another senior class, because there's so many interesting things to do. And it's really hard to keep it in check and avoid making it a 5-year or 6-year degree.
Okay, someone would like to know if there's semiconductor classes.
There's a class called Ieee 362 that's electric, magnetic, and optical properties of materials. So obviously, one of the key electrical properties of materials that we cover is semiconductors. So yes, there is a class that covers semiconductor materials. It's Ieee 362. It's touched on in a few of our senior electives, particularly the ones in electronics. Recent years, we do not have a specific VLSI senior elective class being taught. As quite frankly, none of the current faculty have that as a research area. Primarily, we do a little bit in microwave engineering area with high-speed diodes and transistors, but it's not the primary focus of the class. It's more a use of semiconductor. So depending on how our search goes, we might get somebody that's active in the research and the VLSI area, but currently that's not a big research area for us.
Thank you. And so based off your comment of when it comes to classes, Robert House says, based on experience, I think communication, speech classes, and a golfing semester would be a good career enhancement.
Yep, I don't disagree a bit that I was a little dismayed when I hit the workplace myself about how many reports and how many papers I had to write and how many presentations I had to do. And it's a very, very valuable skill. That's why we emphasize that quite a bit in the senior design classes, because we have them do a preliminary design review, we have them do a critical design review, and we have them do a final presentation, just to kind of get them used to doing it. And it's very key skill in the workplace, that's for sure.
Okay, I think we got them all.
Okay.
I think for right now. Does anyone have any questions or anything they're curious? Please put it in the chat. I'll watch, or the Q&A section. I'd be happy to read those off for you.
Okay, I'm gonna make one last plug. If you're interested in getting one of these 100-year magazines, we got a bunch of boxes of them in the department. We'd love to get them distributed to alumni who are interested.
Do you want to put your email in the chat so they could email you?
Well, it's on my name here, but I'll be happy to add that.
Oh, it is on your name. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Thomas.montoya@sdsmnt.edu. Or if you just go to the School of Mines webpage and you can search on me or search on the electrical engineering department, we're happy to hear from you. And once again, I'll take this last second to express my gratitude that we have very generous alumni, that we really appreciate the donations for things like the Carolyn Britch Student Fund, where we get some treats for our Halloween party for our students, donations towards scholarships. The students really, really appreciate that. And like I mentioned earlier, we've had some great recent donations that are getting off our avionics minor in avionics classes to a roaring start, that we're going to be able to have lots of first class equipment for the students to work with due to your help. So thank you so much to everybody. And if your company has a need for interns or co-ops, our students love the opportunity, that they always speak in glowing terms about their internships and co-op experiences. That for many of them, it leads to a full-time job. Others, it's just a chance to go to a place or part of the country that they've never seen before. So thank you again.
Yes, I appreciate it. I sent you an email, Dr. Montoya, of someone who would like one of your 100-year books.
Oh, terrific.
Yeah.
That'll be great. Hopefully the email has their mailing address and we'll get that sent off.
Yes. Okay. And then I did put a survey link in the chat. So if you have feedback is always a welcome. We appreciate that. And then while we're waiting on some more questions, I'm going to put a couple events that are coming up for that we feature over Zoom. October 21st, in 2 weeks, we'll be featuring a new program called SD First. That's with Dr. Cassandra Barancott. And so there's a link in the window or link to register for that one. And then the next digital department update we're featuring is the ROTC program. So they'll give us an update on what's going with them. Oh, Larry sent his email. So it looks like Larry, I'll catch that for you, Dr. Montoya, and then you'll have,
Great.
you might have to reach out and I might be able to, we'll see if I have some addresses. I want to double check.
Okay. Well, either myself or Leslie will get on that this week or early next week, and we'd love to share them.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we appreciate everyone. Yeah. Again, if you have any questions or anything you think about afterwards, so please feel free to email Dr. Montoya, and then I'll get the slides and we'll get everything uploaded to YouTube. And we appreciate it. Oh, we got another one come through. Oh yeah, I do have you. Okay, Larry, I'll send them your address. So I'll look for that.
Great.
Okay, yeah, so and we'll close up here because we're at the top of the hour. So also thank you all for attending today. We'll have it up on YouTube in the next couple of days. If you can, feedback on the event is always appreciated, and we'll look forward to hopefully seeing you next month or in a couple weeks. So thank you. Have a
Okay,
great
bye
day.
everybody.
Bye.